Hey folks, hope you're well. Today I'm going to look at 10 albums from the 1980s that inspired me once I began playing the guitar. In a previous video I looked at albums from the 1970s that inspired me to become a musician, so we're going to look at ones today that once I got going that really pushed me forward as a musician. So we're going to start out with Friday Night San Francisco. This is a record by Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin, and Paco de Lucia, and it's a live album from the early 80s, about 1981, and they captured a magical night that took place when they were playing in San Francisco, and this became a huge selling album in its time, and I managed to be able to go see them play at Place des Arts in Montreal. And I didn't really know that much about guitar yet, but I knew that you could take it a long way if you wanted to. And these guys inspired me in that way. So I remember sort of jamming on Mediterranean Sundance with my brother and friends back in the day. And so these are just great tracks. One of my favorites actually is Guardian Angel, which is not a live recording, but it's a composition by John McLaughlin that he had made on a previous album, and then they reworked it in this trio format. So that's a fantastic album, and I managed to see them actually again at Convocation Hall when they had Steve Morse opening for them many years later. So this is just a classic, and also they did make a Saturday Night in San Francisco, which really recently came out. I believe it was last year or the year before, and it's every bit as great as this one. They really captured some real magic, these guys. So that's one of the albums that inspired me. By the way, these are in no particular order. They're not ranked. They're just albums that I came across during the early 1980s. So then we've got this one here from Ralph Towner and John Abercrombie, and this is an ECM band, or on the ECM label. And I probably got into this one via Pat Metheny's music, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the sound of these guys was just so unique, and I knew that I liked nylon string guitar, and it was something that I wanted to explore a lot more. But I also love the sound of electric guitar too, and these two have a very complementary kind of sound. The way John Abercrombie plays mostly electric guitar here, and then Ralph Towner playing a 12-string and classical guitar. And I followed both of these musicians throughout their career, and huge influence on me. So that's Ralph Towner, John Abercrombie, and can't remember. Oh yeah, the album's called 5 Years Later. So here's another crazy album. This is before the 1980s. This came out in 1979, and it's Joe Pass and Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen. And of course, Joe Pass is one of the greatest jazz guitarists of all time. Managed to be able to meet him once when he played a workshop at the Mill Wheel. So my brother and I went to this workshop, and he was just beyond belief. His ability to play solo jazz guitar and be able to improvise in just incredible ways with just amazing invention and everything. And I've never seen him live, but I followed Joe Pass right from the day that I heard this, and then got into the Virtuoso albums and many other ones. So Intercontinental is also another favorite, but just love Joe Pass. And that kind of got me thinking about the archtop guitars too, which I ended up buying an archtop guitar after a while. So that's Joe Pass, just a total legend. And then we get back around Al Di Meola again, Splendida Hotel. This was the first Al Di Meola album that I bought, and then after that I continued to collect his work and follow him all along. Saw him play many times live. Saw him with Return to Forever at least twice, and then recently last summer saw him again in Toronto at the Kerner Hall, bringing back kind of the electric band sound. Weird thing is they didn't play anything from this album, although there's two just classic tracks on here. One of them is Alien Chase on Arabian Desert. That's just beyond belief, the way that song just builds in intensity and energy. And then there's also his Splendido Sundance, which is very reminiscent of Mediterranean Sundance, which he did with Paco de Lucia back in the day. So this is a fantastic album, and maybe one that he should revisit at least a couple of these tunes again, I think, in his more recent tours. And this is another amazing album. Mike Stern, probably discovered this more like mid-'80s. And Mike Stern, well, he kind of came out of Berkeley and then ended up joining Miles Davis's band at one point. And this is his first solo album. Every track is great. There's one amazing one that he does with Jaco Pastorius on here. It's probably one of the last appearances of Jaco on an album, and I know that they toured quite a bit together. An amazing moment for me, of the many. I've seen Mike Stern several times in Toronto, but I did see him at 55 Bar in New York City a few years back, which I think in a lot of ways is like the coolest place to see him play, because that was kind of like his local bar where he would play quite often. It was just, a small little place and just amazing energy, and the way this guy can build a solo is really something. So that's Mike Stern's Upside Downside. Well, we've got Michael Hedges. Saw Michael Hedges live several times, and this album, Breakfast in the Field, is one of his classics. I think I have pretty much every Michael Hedges album, and when he passed away in the 90s, that was definitely a very sad day for fans like me. But there's just so many great songs on this album. Songs like The Funky Avocado are just classic. They're amazing live. I saw him play at the Ontario Place Forum, Convocation Hall, and I think I may have seen him also at Roy Thompson Hall too. I've always loved the work of Michael Hedges, just not only as a player but as a composer too, and entertainer. There was so much about him, so much depth, and I don't think he got to fully realize his full, where he could take it, dying so young. And I'm not really sure if they know what happened, but apparently they found his car at the bottom of a cliff, and that was it, the end of Michael Hedges. So just love this guy, his guitar work, and I love the fretless bass work of Michael Manring on a lot of these tracks. So yeah, it's from 1981, Michael Hedges. And of course we've got Adrian Belew, Twang Bar King. This is such an entertaining record. So much fun stuff on here. And I kind of got into, I did get into Adrian Belew via King Crimson, because they did those amazing albums in the early 80s. Sort of the trio of records, the red one and the blue one and the yellow one. That are an amazing trilogy of albums. But Adrian Belew he's one of my favorites. It's just, there's nobody that sounds like him, and just the way he makes these like weird sounds on the guitar and everything. He's so unique, and not only is he just a great player, but he's a fantastic songwriter too and singer. There's so much to this guy's music, and I've followed his career ever since. But this is kind of where it started for me with Twang Bar King. And then of course we've got Alan Holdsworth. This is just an EP. The first one I bought from Alan Holdsworth when it came along. I guess it was on a major label, I suppose. But all of this stuff is just incredible. I can't really play anything that sounds like Alan Holdsworth. So although he's an influence in terms of, his playing and everything, I'm not sure that I really incorporate it into what I do. but just as an artist and just finding your unique voice, that's probably what I got from Alan Holdsworth. And I had a chance to see him live a couple of times in Toronto back in the day, and I continued to uncover new, layers of every time I listen to his music. There's just something new to kind of discover. And this is just a great record. Jeff Berlin on bass, Chad Wackerman on drums. Just unbelievable stuff. So that's Alan Holdsworth. And then we've got one of the members of Genesis here. Genesis are probably my favorite band of all time. And this album here is one of his solo albums. It's called Private Parts and Pieces 2. Came out in 1980. And as I was kind of getting into the solo artists or the solo work of different members of Genesis, I really started to delve into these Anthony Phillips albums, and they're all really cool, and makes you realize what an important member he was of the early Genesis in the sound of Trespass when you hear these tunes. And what I like about it, they're just, they're kind of short, and they're, ideas, they're very, delicate kind of acoustic songs. And I've definitely found a lot of that in what I do as an artist, because most of my tunes are like that. They're acoustic, and they have that, they're, concise ideas, and, not necessarily long drawn out epic things, but just nice, short, concise ideas with a definite, sort of mood idea to them, and with a bit of classical influence. That's what I've always liked about Anthony Phillips, and this is one of my favorite records by him, Back to the Pavilion, Private Parts and Pieces 2. And then we're going to look at one more today, which is Pat Metheny Group Travels. I had discovered Pat Metheny Group before this. This was kind of leading up. I'd already heard, the White Album and Watercolors, and also Bright Size Life and Off Ramp. But this is where it kind of came together, where you could, live. And I saw this tour in Toronto at the Ontario Place Forum, and ever since I've seen Pat Metheny, I don't know how many, countless times. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen him play live. Just saw him recently doing a solo tour. But this record here really shows, I think, the Pat Metheny Group at kind of a peak time, where you've got Pat Metheny, Lyle Mays, Steve Rodby, Dan Gottlieb is still on drums, and Nana Vasconcelos on percussion. And there's just so many amazing songs on here. It opens up with Are You Going With Me, and it, Phase Dance, and Going Ahead, which is another cool tune. The Sandler, they're all just so amazing. And you just really marvel at the way that not only the kinds of compositions that the Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays produced, but the way they could arrange the music and also improvise. They tell a story like for me, there's no other musicians that I connect with that can tell the story the way these guys do in an improvisation. So this, for me, is just a real high point. So that's all for today. Hopefully you can, comment, subscribe on my video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch up with you in the next video, where I'm going to talk about some albums from the late 1980s that had an influence on me. So take care. Talk to you soon.